Hello and welcome to a new watercolour video. I've just been doing a little bit of practice of some watercolour trees. I'm going to make some watercolour Christmas cards. I'm going to do like a little series on watercolour Christmas cards. So this is kind of the design I want to go for. I'm now going to paint it onto a better quality watercolour paper. So if you want to paint along, I'll tell you what paints I'm using. I'm using out of the Winsor & Newton palette, I'm using indigo because I prefer the Winsor & Newton indigo. It's really nice. And then these are Daniel Smith paints, and I'm using a lovely dark green called Undersea Green. I'm also using pale gold from this watercolour palette. I might actually, the pale gold isn't quite as shiny. I might go for a more shiny. This one's a little bit subtle, but I may go for this one here, brassy, bottom left, because it's not a saturated really yellow gold, but it's more shiny than this pale gold bottom right. So I've got a lovely fruit tea to have while I'm painting and a nice bar of chocolate. And then I've also, if you can see here where I've been practicing, you can see, can you see that glisten? I'm also adding some glisten in there. And I'm using the gorgeous fragments sets that I've got. And all these glittery metallic paints are available in my online store, and I hand make them myself. Okay, so I'm going to go through it step by step, and I hope you paint along. Everything I'm using, all the paper and everything, I will list in the description below the video. So I'm going to use one of these Christmas cards to mount it onto. I'm just going to mount that onto the front. So I've got a piece of really good quality watercolour paper. This is Archie's watercolour paper, cold press. It's a lot bigger than that, but I'm going to put a masking tape around the outside, and then it'll be trimmed down when it's finished, so it'll fit nicely on the front of this card. And I'm going to do another layer just to reinforce that, because this tape's just sticking to the paper, it's not sticking to the board, so I'll put some on there to stick it to the board. The first thing I need to do is the background. I think I'm going to add the glimmer. It's quite difficult to see. I've just got a little bit here. I tried to paint some background trees. I'm going to leave them out. I didn't really like them. They didn't really turn out very well. But I want this glisten in, so I'm going to add that to my indigo that I'm using in the background here. So I'm using a mixing brush so that I don't wear out my paintbrushes. And this is the Winsor & Newton indigo, which is a really nice indigo colour. I'm going to make up some of that. Quite strong, really strong mix. And then these fragments, this fragment set that I've got, that's my little set, and there's 6 different colours. So I'm going to go with the sapphire, which will match the blue. I'm going to leave that on there, put a good few drops of water on there, and I'm going to leave that for about 2 or 3 minutes to soften. It's a very, very strong binder for these paints, and that makes sure it'll stick to the paper. But the downside of that is it does take a couple of minutes to soak to get it going first. Okay, so now that's a little bit softer, I'm going to grab a bit of that on my brush. You don't need loads. And I'm going to mix it in to the indigo. I'm going to add a little bit more, so I'm rinsing the brush off. Make sure it's nice and clean because I don't want the indigo to go in here. And I'm going to grab some more. It's still actually not quite soft enough, so the longer you leave it the better. So I would recommend adding some water to this a few minutes before you start your painting, then it'll be lovely and soft. So you can see that's lovely and glitzy now. So now I've got a brush that will hold a fair amount of water. It's a mop brush, but it's not a huge mop brush. Very absorbent. It's a number 2 Da Vinci Casaneo. Getting some clean water, and I'm going to wet the whole of the paper. Make sure it's all nice and wet, but we don't want it saturated. We just want a nice wet sheen over it. Now the first bit of water that you put on will seep in to the paper, so make sure there's plenty of water on there. Can you see that sheen? That's what you want it to look like. So there's no water running off it. It's just, you can see it's puddling there at this part here, right? We don't really want that. I'll just kind of let that run to the top. So maybe if you just give it a minute or so, let it sink in a little bit so that there's no puddles. But that's kind of perfect what you want it to look like. So now I've got the excess water out of the brush, and then I'm going to grab some of my mixture. And I'm going to put it in all around the edges. Now it doesn't have to be neat, just shove it down fast. And then all the way down to the bottom, because we don't want it too dark at the bottom. We want it a lot darker at the top, so we want to add more up at the top. Now most of that paint's gone now, which is fine, because I want to add some neat indigo right from the pan, because we want it to be super strong. So not too much water on the brush, and get that really dark indigo. And drop it in mainly around the very top and the top corners. Now we might have to see what it's like when it dries. We might have to do a second layer. Because it will dry a lot lighter. I'm going to take it right down because I want it a nice graduation. And then I'm going to rinse the brush out, get the excess water off, and then I'm going to lift some of that back out and dab it on my tissue. Because we don't want it to look perfect, we want it to be a little bit uneven. We want it light around where the tree is going to go, so that when we do the dark tree, it'll stand out against a lighter background. I've got a little bit of water on my brush, not much, but I want some really thick paint, and I'm going to put even more just to speed the whole thing up, try and get some real darkness up at the top there. And just a few little dabs just to give it a little bit of unevenness, a little bit further down, and then we'll just see maybe a little bit more. Right, just leave that like that and then see how it dries. So that's fully dry now, and I'm going to wet it again and add a little bit more of the indigo. So unfortunately it's come off this, because I used the heat gun. This is peeled off, which is really annoying because I need to wet the whole thing again. Okay, so to add some more water, some more indigo, really thick, deep indigo. I'm probably going to trim some of these edges off, so that's why I'm adding a little bit more darkness. Maybe a little bit down the sides there. And I'm just going to leave that to dry on its own. So the washi tape, unfortunately it all peeled up again because I'd used the heat gun. So I'm going to have to retape that back down. It dried all curved and I've had to have it in a book overnight to flatten it. But I just want to show you the amazing glisten. So that's it dried, and look at that beautiful glisten all over in the dark area, and then also in the light area you can see the sparkle. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It's actually better than I expected it to turn out. So I'm going to tape it back down. This time I'm going to use proper artist tape. It doesn't matter about getting it perfect because these edges are going to be cut off anyhow. And I'm not using tons of water now. I've used the maximum water that I was going to use. But you can see the paper's now curved, unfortunately. I'm going to maybe try and iron that later on when I've finished. Next I'm going to add this little area here, not the one with the line, but this little area here with the kind of little bits of grass. So for that I used the undersea green. I mean, you can use whatever dark green you want, but just like a dark green colour. So the undersea green, and I mixed that with some indigo. I want it to be more on the greeny side, so I'm adding more green to that. So I'm going to paint a strip of that. It's quite watery. Paint a strip of that kind of across the bottom. And then I'm going to use this brush with a point. I've got some more paint on the brush and I'm just going to drag. I want it a little bit more watery. So add a little bit more water into that. And then just pull up some grass strokes like this. Just make it random. Dry my brush off and then just kind of maybe rough that edge up a little bit like this. Drop in some more colour, just in different places. Just drop some more of that paint in. I'm going to leave that to completely dry. I'm not going to use the heat gun because of what happened last time. I'm going to pull some bits of that out. Dry it on the brush because it's kind of, I want it to look a little bit more textured, not just one solid colour. And while that's drying, I'm going to practice the shape of the star. That's not really the shape of the star that I want, and I need more practice at that. So I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to use Brassy from the metallic set. Good few drops of water, so there's plenty of water on that, and then leave that for a good few minutes to soften. So now that's lovely and soft. It's much better to make the paint up and put it in the palette so that it stays the same consistency, because if you go and paint some of this and then come back to this, some of it will have dried and it'll have gone really thick. So if you get it in your palette, that's much better. So that's a little bit too thick. I'm going to add a little drop of water there, not too much. So I've got a nice consistency there. And then I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, tiny little number 0 pointy brush. So I'm experimenting here with some white dots and some gold stars, whereas here I did gold dots and gold stars in here as well. So yeah, just experimenting. I want to see what white dots will look like with just a few gold objects. So the type of star that I'm painting, this is what I really need to practice more. So it looked like it starts off like kind of an upside down V, not too wide, but I think I might have painted it too wide already. So I want these bottom bits to be pointy. And then kind of another V shape here. Join that on. So I'm adding quite a lot of paint here because I want it to be really opaque. I don't want any of that blue showing through. definitely need more practice, but it doesn't need to be perfect. It'll still look really cute. It'll look quirky if it's not perfect, and then if it's perfect it'll look perfect, so that'll be good. So either way it'll just be fine. And then this is just for these two, it's just a straight line right across, and then make them into a triangle. That doesn't look right with that white dot there, but obviously I'm just practicing. So, and then I want to practice some smaller stars as well. So I think I'm just going to do, I just want like little tiny little ones like this. Maybe just do them like that. It's just so difficult to get it like really perfect. See, I messed that one up because those two have like joined together. Try again. Yeah, just little ones like that, just a few of those. I'm actually just going to try a different brush. I'll try this 5/0 by Rosemary & Co. So that's a really long one. Really long and thin. This might be better actually. Just do one up here. See, if it's too pointy, I can't get much paint off the end of the brush. Yeah, it's just practice, isn't it? I'm just going to keep practicing. That one's really nice. Oh yeah. So that's what they look like. Yeah, I think that one might be the most successful one. Yeah, it's going to be the 5/0. It's making the slimmest little line. So now for the tree, I'm going to start on the tree. So I want some of the undersea green. Just going to stick it on there. And I want a fairly strong mixture of this. Then into that I'm going to mix some emerald from the fragment set. So this is the emerald fragments. Get a lot of that on my brush. Mix it into the green. If I look here, even though I put that grass layer on, the sparkle is still showing through that paint, which is good. I'm going to go back to this brush by Matthew Palmer, this weird shaped brush. I'm going to start by painting the stalk of the tree and the branches. Just going to kind of map out where I'm going to put the branches. The star needs to go around here, so we want a gap of sky above the star. The star's going to be around this big, so we'll start the top of the tree about here. So just going to paint a straight line, as straight as I can. Let's just paint that down to there, and then some branches like this. I don't have to, so I'm going to start with smaller branches at the top, and then the next branch down a bit bigger. And then this one I'm going to make the kind of the biggest. So it's a bit difficult to, I'm going to have to start from here. And then make them not quite as big. So kind of the biggest branch, they're kind of like trees, they kind of stick out here, then the branches go in a bit and then they go out again. And then the bottom branch like this. It doesn't matter, it can be quite rough because we're going to mess this up anyhow. And then I'm going to get loads more water on my brush. I'm going to water that down a little bit. And then on each of the branches, I'm going to try and do this quickly because I don't want that bottom one to dry. So just feather it out like this at the bottom and the top. Doesn't matter if it's kind of messed up like that one has, just doesn't matter because we're going to do kind of lots of layers. it's actually a little bit strong. I'm going to water it down even more.
Come on, soft, turn the key.
So I'm coming from the middle branch and then going up.
Push the pause for relief.
And then the same at the bottom, coming from the middle and going down.
You don't even have to
Try and make them a bit bigger for the branches further down.
in the sun. Someday I will see the whole deal through. Today I've got better things to do. Oh.
Cleaned my brush. I'm going to try and pull some of that off because it's just a bit deep for the first layer. I'm going to kind of mess the middle up a little bit so we haven't got that harsh line.
To leave a little bit undone and be the
I'm
cat.
getting clean water on my brush. I want some of these to be a bit more washed out looking. And almost completely closing those gaps in between.
Be the cat in the sun.
And then I've got the little pan of undersea green and I'm going to get some of that really thick sticky mixture. And paint it in while the page is still wet. And just go over the branches.
Set aside every empty spreadsheet line and loosen up on the grind. Simmer down, settle back and mess.
So this looks completely different from our first one. Every time I've done it, they look completely different. So yours will probably look completely different as well, but it'll still look lovely. They're still all nice, but they're just different kind of variations. It's almost impossible to get it to look like the same. So I'm going to leave that to dry now and then add some more details once it's dry. I might just add some more darkness down the middle like this. That's dry, so I'm now going to make a strong mixture of the undersea green. So this one won't have any of the glisten in it because we don't want to overdo it with the glisten. We've already got some gorgeous green glisten on that, and then I'm just going to make some darker branches.
Be the cat in the sun. Someday I will see the whole deal through. Today I've got better things to do. Oh.
So I'm trying not to make them super like all the same. I'm trying to kind of make them a little bit different. We don't want them to look uniform.
To leave a little bit undone. Be the cat in the sun. Be the cat in the sun.
And then we want a lot more darkness to the middle stalk. Just kind of rough, and then kind of like join it on with the branches. And get a bit of water. I want to make it a little bit darker in between the branches. Spread that out a little bit. I want to get rid of all these little light bits. It's a little bit harsh, so this will soften it all out a little bit. I'm just going to keep adding more and more layers until I get it to look like I want it to look. Okay, so I'll leave that to dry and then move on to the next layer when that's dry. I want a really strong dark mix for the darkest parts of the tree. So undersea green, quite strong, and I'm going to mix that with some of the indigo. Mix some indigo into that, and then that'll make it even darker, a lovely darker mix. It's more blue than green. So I'm just going to get a little tiny brush and I'm going to darken the stalk in some of the places. At the bottom there, not the stalk, the trunk of the tree. And then I'm going to add some darker parts to the branches, just some little strokes. Bit of water, spread some of it out, especially around the middle. Now while that's drying, I'm going to add some little lighter highlight bits on, so I'm getting some white gouache. Split it into two areas. I'm going to add a tiny little bit of undersea green. Add a lot more of undersea green to this side, so make that a lot darker. I'm also going to go back to the really dark mixture that I used, which is the green and the indigo, and I'm going to just do a little curve here like this to the base of the tree. Just so that it touches the tree, and then get water on my brush and just do that. Just bring it down. Make the mixture a little bit stronger with a little bit more blue, a little bit more indigo, make it a little bit more stronger, and kind of maybe just drop a little bit of that in the top. Yeah, just going to leave that to dry on its own like that. And hopefully these blades of grass here will kind of look like they're just in the background somewhere. Right, now I'm going to get the gouache mixture, which is now dried a little bit. I'm going to get the darker one, and then for the lower branches, just gonna add a few little brush strokes. And then get the lighter coloured gouache. And just add a few little strokes to the upper branches. I'm going to add a little highlight on the top there, maybe just now and again. Just going to rough some of them up a little bit. If they look a bit too streaky, just blend them out a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the gold. I'm going to do the gold star first. 5/0 by Rosemary & Co. liner. Then I'm going to get some gold paint on the dotting tool and start just adding some little balls to the tree. Just in random places. And then just do some smaller ones by just making little taps just to do some much smaller ones. Next is just to add some white stars. So I've got some white gouache and I've watered it down a little bit just so it's got a nice bit of flow, and I'm going to add some stars into the sky. So the first dot will be a large one, so I'll pop that down, and then each dot you do after that will be smaller, so I'll move it about like this and just kind of place them randomly. And really try not to overdo it, which is really difficult. Okay, so that's the final look. So now I need to cut it out, and I'm going to add a gold border around the edge as well before I stick it onto my card. So you can see the tree is glistening with the emerald fragments, and then the background, apart from the stars that I've put on, there's also that beautiful glisten in the pink colour. I mean, you could just have it as a painting, but I am going to make this into a Christmas card. I want to do a bit of gold around the edge. I want it to be a little bit scuffed up, kind of like a rough edge. So I'm going to practice on these two first. I actually really like the little practice ones. I think I might actually like them more than the main one. So I'm just doing this on the side of the brush just to get the edge coated, and then I'm going to go slightly in like this. Make it a little bit messy. Yeah, I think that looks quite nice. That's the finished card. I think it looks lovely. So I'll just put a sentiment on the inside. And I think that looks really, really lovely. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and thanks very much for watching.
Soft, turn the key and cool her off. Just a pause for